Hey guys, so real quick, I wanted to share this. Yesterday, I got a reel sent to me on IG, and it was a scientist saying that he doesn't believe that there is a God that is all good and all powerful because he sees like tsunamis and wars and like poor people and all this stuff. So basically saying that either God is all good but doesn't have the power to change that, or God is all powerful but he's not good because he's allowing that. And when I heard this, of course, I'm like, the devil's such a liar. He will do anything and say anything to get us to be against our creator. But I told my friend this. I said, listen, you know how people say there's a saying that says like you can never please everyone, or nothing's ever good enough, or it doesn't matter what you do, like no one's ever satisfied. I'm like, this is what applies here. I'm like, because in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the angels, he did it so that everything was perfect and everything was holy and everything was pure and there was no evil and there was no sin. But of course, the enemy, didn't like that. He wanted to do his own will. And he convinced the third of the angels to go against God, right? Which I would always think like, I always had a lot of questions. So I would ask God, I would be like, Lord, why did you, if you knew that was going to happen, why would you do it? But there's a purpose. God has a purpose for everything. So one of the things that I was talking about with some friends is we were saying, how did the enemy convince all these angels to leave heaven? Like, what is it that that convinced, like, how did he convince them to leave heaven, right? Because it says, because of your many trades and your many dealings. And how many of you know that with humans, he, like what he did with Jesus, he presents them opportunities and fame and fortune and material things. And he promises, I'll give you this in exchange for this. So the Bible says, because of your many tradings, I believe it's in the book of Revelation. So we're like, okay, so what did he trade? Like, what was he doing business with them with? Like, what was he trying to seduce them with? Like, what? And one of my friends was like, oh, I think it was worship, because, he would be the one to take in the worship. So I think worship creates a substance, and, everyone was giving their opinion. And I was not convinced. So I watched a movie, I think it's called Nefarious or something, in which this man who he needs deliverance, he's speaking and he says something that I'm like, oh my goodness, that makes a lot of sense. And he says, we had a will, but we couldn't exercise it. So I'm like, so the enemy probably thought, let me convince them we can do our own thing and you'll be able to exercise your will and do whatever you want. That's why the Satanic Bible says, do what thy will, right? And I always use this example. It's like in the movie Big Daddy, where he thinks he's being a good father when he lets the little boy get away with murder. But then sure enough, he finds out he's not being a good father, and everyone is mocking the little boy and nobody likes him because he's being disrespectful and he's peeing on the plants in school and everyone is mocking him. And then he tries to be a good father and fix it. And he's like, no, now we have to have rules and we have to take showers and we have to go to sleep early. And the boy is not used to that discipline, but that discipline is what a good father does. So it's almost like, let's say you have a business and you want everything in your business to run smoothly. You want excellence. You don't want any clients complaining. You want to give the best excellence. You want your employees to wear uniforms, not show tattoos, not be disrespectful, not have gossip. But there's an employee that he's always against everything that the owner says. I don't know, he thinks he's the owner of the company. And he's like, no, I don't want to wear the uniform. No, and he's rebelling and he's doing his own will. What is eventually going to happen? The owner's going to be like, look, if you don't want to abide by the rules, you cannot work for us. Plain and simple, right? So that's what happened. The enemy wanted to do his own thing. God was like, listen, tú no manda aquí, tú no eres el que corta el bacalao soy yo. So peace out, bye, So then God says, okay, no worries. Now we're going to create men in our image and we're going to let him have free will. But in order for man to have free will, there has to be something that he can choose. And I would always ask God too. I would always be like, Lord, but why did you put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden if you knew that Adam was going to eat from it? And it's like, because Adam had to have a choice. And I heard Bill Johnson say that. God spoke to me through Bill Johnson, because I heard Bill Johnson say that. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because if he hadn't had a choice, then God is doing the same thing. It's basically, you have to do whatever I want, which is holiness, holiness, holiness. We know God is a God of holiness. That would be his perfect choice. But he wanted men to have free will, right? So he says, we're going to create men in our image. He's going to have free will. And he tells Adam, he's like, you can eat, you can do everything. The only thing you cannot do is eat from the tree. And what is the one thing that Adam decides to do with Eve? They eat from the tree. So They chose to disobey God. They chose to invite sin on the earth. It's not God that invited sin. As a matter of fact, he undid the works of the enemy when Jesus came and died on the cross, right? And it's humans that continue to sin and that continue to give the enemy legal right and that continue to, all the chaos you see, it's all because of sin. So it's not God. And God gave us free will because God is a good God. And what these devils didn't understand is that outside of God, they're going to start decaying because God is life. And outside of life is death, which is why God told Adam, when you eat from that tree, if you eat from that tree, you will surely die, because sin leads to death, because sin goes against God, who is life. So once you choose to go against God, you eventually start decaying, okay? So yeah, this scientist thinks he's being all smart by big talk and by saying, oh, you know, I don't believe it. If we had the capacity to understand everything that God does and why God does it, then mysteries wouldn't be necessary. Like there's a reason that God doesn't show us everything, and he wants us to go to him and seek him for answers, but we fall short. We're always gonna fall short. We don't understand, we don't have all the answers. But yeah, no, this video I saw was like, this guy did not just say that God is not all good and all powerful. Definitely God is all good and all powerful, but he is so good that he actually says, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna let men decide. But men thinks he knows everything and that he has it's like a parent that has a little child that's a smart mouth and the little kid thinks he knows everything and the parent is just like, if only he knew, he knows nothing. It's the same concept. So anyway, I hope this will be able to expose some truth, and when videos like that come out, people are not easily deceived thinking that, you know, just because these people have a title or they're scientists or whatever, they know everything. And thanks for watching, guys. God bless you guys. Have a nice day.